Well, I had the flat tire here on the Bobcat. I took it down to the repair shop here in town, and it sat in there for a couple weeks or more, and they didn't get it to it. Now the problem with it is that I can't get the bead to seat on it. The sidewalls are just too stiff, and there's nothing that I could do to get the bead to seat on it. So I took it down there because they have the tools and stuff to do it. And there's nothing wrong with the tire. It leaks air somewhere. Anyway, I run it, it went flat. I didn't know it was flat because it's so damn stiff, and then when I was plowing snow, I turned a little bit or something and popped the bead loose on it. Anyway, that's not the first time I've done that. That's the second or third time I've done that. I try to keep air in it, but I didn't do it. I fell down on the job this last time. So anyhow, they didn't get to it at the at the repair shop, and so I went and ordered a bead seating tool, which is just a donut here that you run around the bead, around the wheel, and it fits between the wheel and the tire and kind of seals up on that. I've used those before and they work pretty good. I put it on there and it worked, but what's supposed to happen is when it inflates the tire, as the tire comes up and seats the bead, this thing's supposed to roll out of there. Well, these tires have a bead lock on them, meaning that they're really thick here on the sidewall, and they got an edge lip that sticks up along the bead to keep any rocks or anything from getting down in there and breaking the bead loose on it. So anyway, that bead lock kept this thing from rolling out. I had to deflate the tire to get that thing out and start over again. And this thing is really tight. This is a 16-inch wheel. It's a 12 by 16-inch tire. So this is supposed to be for a 15 to 17 and a half inch tire. And it fit tight around there, and it's hard to get on. It did fit tight and it worked. But again, I couldn't get it out without deflating the tire, so that didn't work right. So I got to looking, and I found one that's for a 19-inch tire, and I thought I'd try it because that other one was so tight. I thought maybe a little bigger one would fit, but this one is just too big. It won't fit in there, so that won't work. So the other thing that I ordered was one of these inflator blasters. I'm going to try that. I haven't done too much with them. I've always been able to get the sidewalls to seat by hand. What this thing does is you fill this up full of air off the air compressor, and then it's got a big nozzle that comes out and fits down here in the bead, and when you put the air to it, you put the air line into the valve core, into the valve stem, and lock it on there and turn the air on, and then you put this in there, and then that blows air in there. All of a sudden you put all of the air in there all at once, which will hopefully blow that tire out until the bead seats, and then it'll fill up. So I just came, so I'm going to put it together, and we'll try it again. I'll probably build a fire in here again and get everything warmed up to get that tire so that it's warmed up and softened up a little bit before I do it. But this just came in the mail, so I'll get this put together. Got it from Amazon. And it was the cheapest one they had on there. I was afraid it wasn't going to be very good, but it's actually a fairly heavy-duty tank. Oh, anyway, I'll get busy and put that together, and maybe tomorrow I'll get a fire going in the morning, try to get it warmed up in here and give it time for that tire to get warmed up, and then we'll see if we can't get the bead seated on it, get it inflated so we can get it back on the tractor on the Bobcat. We've got a spare on the Bobcat, and it's a 12-inch wheel, a 16-inch tire, but it's not the same size. It's not a 12, it's like a 10 something or something like that, so it's not as big a diameter, and I don't like running that on there any more than I have to. I've already run it more than I should, so anyway, I'll try to get this thing fixed. So I looked at all the different options that they had on Amazon for these inflators tanks, and I decided to get a 10-gallon tank instead of a 5-gallon tank because this is a big tire, and a 5-gallon tank just, more, some is good, more is better. So this is what I got, and they said they had all kinds of different prices, everything from $68, $79 up to $200 and some for them. And I wound up getting the cheapest one I could get that was a 10-gallon one, which I think was about $79. Well, there's nothing on here. It has a name on it on this tank. It's got the caution and operation steps and specifications and whatnot on there, but it doesn't really have a name for it. I got a shipping tag on it here that covers up part of it, but it's AT 4207, made in China, of course. Comes with a what is that, 1.5 inch or so, maybe it's a 2-inch ball valve. This is the inflator nozzle here. This thing goes up in the tire, screws on there. This is the quick connector. I'm going to have to change that because I have a different fitting on mine. Got a pop-off valve, pressure relief valve, and a liquid-filled pressure gauge, and Teflon tape. And so far everything looks like it's pretty good. It's got this nipple on here. Yeah, it's a 2-inch nipple for the main inflator portion of it, and then it's got 1/4-inch nipples on here for the pressure gauge, pop-off valve, and the inflator filler. And it comes with a generous supply of Teflon tape, so I don't got any complaints about it so far. We'll find out if it leaks or not once I get it together. Well, I got this thing together and I put some air in it to see how it's going to do. And it hadn't blown up yet. Anyway, that's not too bad. Putting this big valve on here was kind of a challenge. The threads on that were, I don't know, not square or something on that nipple. Well, I took a file and cleaned the threads up a little bit to get it to start easier. Once I got it to start, then I could turn it on. It was still kind of stiff, so they're not very clean threads. Then I went to put the rest of these in. They must have threaded those out with a straight thread instead of a pipe thread, because all of these fittings in here are pipe thread. The pipe thread is tapered, of course, so as it goes in it tightens up, and these didn't tighten up when they went in. Well, anyway, this Teflon tape that they sent, well, it got cracked here on the roll, and so it was cutting itself, but anyway, it wasn't holding up very good. Not the best to use on a straight thread, especially when you got a tapered thread going into a straight thread, so I dug out some pipe sealant and used it instead. I've got air leaking out of this filler fitting here, so I'm going to have to redo that. Maybe try something else on it, I don't know. Anyway, that's leaking. That's the only one that might be leaking where this valve goes into that too, so I might need to get a new elbow there. I had to put a different coupling on there for my air hoses to fit mine. That's not a big deal, but otherwise everything else seems like it's holding up. The only other thing is this pressure gauge is in kilograms per centimeter instead of pounds. I was going to say let this sit here overnight and see how it holds up, but it's leaking out through that valve fitting right there already, so I'll have to do something with that. But that would be fine for filling that up and doing a quick pop on the tire. It just won't hold air overnight or for any length of time. Oh, I didn't put this end on there because I wanted to see if this was going to have to come apart again. This is leaking air pretty serious there, so I'm going to have to do something with that. Well, we're having fun here now. I took that elbow out of there and put a O-ring on it, some more gookumpucky on it, threaded it back in there, and it doesn't appear that there's any air leaking out around it now, although there's really no backer for that O-ring. That seems to have stopped the leak, but now it's leaking. I think that valve is leaking itself right there in the shaft on the valve. Yeah, and that shaft right there is leaking, so that valve's no good. Well, this thread, this nipple here, all of them are just hogged out so bad that they're not very good. I might have to do something different with this, but this valve is no good here now. It's still holding air enough to do what it needs to do with the tire, I suppose. So this is the other thing that I got to go with that. I had some of these chucks here for airing up the tires, but you have to hold those on, and I didn't like holding that on there, blowing that tire up with that bead cedar thing in there. So I went down, I got one of these. It's virtually the same thing, but it has a lock on it, so you can put this over the valve stem and it'll actually go down over it and lock on it, and then you can pull it off and release, so you can walk away and leave it. This one here, you have to hold it on the valve stem while you're airing it up. This one, you can put it on there and then turn the air on and walk away and leave it. Problem is that this one turns 90 degrees, and so this little handle then gets right in, either around on the inside of the wheel or right up against the rim of the wheel, and it can get kind of awkward to get to. So I saw these on Amazon, and they've got a lock on them too, and they just press straight in, and so it won't be interfered with around in the tire and the rim of the tire. So we'll see how those work. Well, I got a fire going in here this morning, had it going for a little while, and I'm going to see what I can do about getting this tire inflated now. I got my inflator over there all pumped up with air, so it's got 150 pounds, 140 pounds in it. Take the valve core out of the valve stem. There we go. So the air flows in there better, faster, and I've got this lock-on inflator, and I'll put it on my air hose, and I've got my air line turned off right now at the tank. Anyway, what problem I've got here now is I've got this thing sitting so that the bottom bead is down on the bead of the tire, or the rim of the tire, or the wheel. So to get this to work, what I've got to do is I've got to get this face side where the valve, I've got to get it up to where, so that the bead is seated around that side and the other side is open. I did it this way when I was trying out that rubber bead seater tool on there, and that worked, but again I couldn't get the bead thing off of there. So what I'm going to do is I've got it sitting up on a 5-gallon bucket there, so that the weight of the tire pulls it down around the rim. I'm going to go ahead and take it off of that and stand it up and see if I can't get it to go the other way. So I'm going to wipe all this down with some soapy water to get it lubricated in there on that bead, so that it slides on there better and seats better. God, I hate lifting that thing anymore. Oh, that's not so bad. All I do is tip it over. Alright, now I got to try to get it so that bead goes down and seats on that. Maybe I'll do that the same way I did it before. Oh, there we go. Now I got to get this back bead loose. No, that didn't work. Alright, well, the problem that I had before on this was this ring here. It's so small that it gets down in behind that bead lock on this tire, and then it won't pop out once the tire gets inflated, once it seats the bead on there. So it's so small that I have to get it way down in there to get it on. So what I've done here now, hopefully we'll see if this works, and I've gone ahead and stretched that thing and got it out, and so it's out hopefully past that bead lock. Let's see how that works. Compressor going right there in my ear. I can't hear the air going into the tire, so we got 32 pounds in there now. This is a front tire, so it gets a lot of weight on it, so I'm going to fill it up to about 50 pounds. Alright, that's getting up there where it's starting to squeeze the water out of that bead. That's good. Okay, well, that tire's inflated. That took More work than I expected. So a bead cedar seal that is, I think this is a 15 and a half to 17 and a half. It's just not quite big enough. And this one is a 19 and a half and it's too big. So I need one for 16 to 18 or something like that. But I didn't see one of those on Amazon for sale. We can make this one work. What I had to do was put it down in there, in around the wheel until I got it on, and then I could pull it out to where it was out, to where this bead lock here, it was outside that bead lock. But I had to get it down underneath the bead here to get it to stay in, because this side here, as you saw, wasn't in quite far enough, and the tire would inflate, but then it'd start pushing that seat, that donut out of there, and before the bead got locked on there, and then it just collapsed back down again. Anyway, we got it now. Let that thing sit for a while and check the air. That's for my Bobcat, and I don't need that right away. All the snow's plowed. Everything's taken care of out here for the time being, so I'm not going to need that for a while. But I'm going to want to change that tire and put it on there. I'll let it sit until it gets ready to use it, and then next time I get ready to use the Bobcat, then I'll change them. The tire that's on there now is still a 12-inch tire, or a 16-inch tire, but it's not as large in diameter as this one. It's wore quite a bit, and I don't like running that on there, odd-sized tire on there. Anyhow, there's my tire fixed. The bead inflator didn't work, partially because I had it on the wrong side. It may have worked better if I could have put it in from the back side instead of the front side, but that sidewall on that tire is just so stiff I'm not even sure it'd work then. I didn't see any movement in it at all. I could see the air coming out of the tire, out of the wheel, between the wheel and the tire, but I didn't see any movement in that sidewall at all when I blasted that. That's for an experimentation for a different day. It'll work on other tires, like my pickup tires, if I change those or something else, but ideally you would find another one of those rubber donuts that's between the two sizes that I have. I let that tire sit overnight and checked it, and it's not leaking any air, so that's good. So the next time I get the Bobcat going, need to use it for something, I have to bring it over here close and change that tire out. But meanwhile, I'll leave it in here or put it someplace out of the way and then keep checking it to see how fast it leaks off.